of the VMEU.
Barron.
Here.
Elway.
Here.
Hainstock.
Yes.
Meyer.
Yes.
Woodhouse.
Here. Approve the meeting minutes of the VMEU 09, 709, and 723 special minutes and special meeting 07, 807. Motion. Your second. Second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Approve invoices.
I had a question. I mean, going through these, is this just VMU invoices, or is it both of them?
It's everything.
So can we actually approve these VNCs at our meeting, or shouldn't that be a VNC?
Right now, technically, they're all out of the electric fund, Fund 953.
Well, we set it up to 954, and then I've identified all the ones that need to be.
I'm just
Put-
saying,
put in
can this board approve it since we're two technically separate entities?
Well, you can approve the ones that are VMU applicable, and
I understand that.
the other ones, I mean, you just don't know which ones those are right now.
You kind of guessed that.
Well, right now, they are all out of Fund 953, which is the electric utility.
There's $950,000 worth of equipment coming out of these claims. It's the communications.
Yeah, that's why I was a little concerned.
So there's still not two separate things yet.
Not yet.
And then where that second bank account might come in handy?
The general ledger line expenditure lines have not been set up yet for Fund 954.
There'll be some journal entries to move things around.
I mean, I understand all that, but
That's
we've known this now for how many months? So we had two separate entities.
And I kind of waited till the bond thing basically became effective July 1st, so that's the date on which I'm starting to move everything over. At least the ones that are the fiber project related that belong on the communication. Not all of them will. I think the biggest one that won't is the one from Central Cable putting in the main line, because that's basically the electrical infrastructure part, which they put in for 80% of their equipment. I don't remember what their total was.
So moving forward in September, then would we have two different sets of
Should, then
things?
there's no reason why these can't be journal entered into the other account. Yeah, that
Yeah.
528,000, that's central.
Right.
We want to get it started in the right foot, I would think. Okay. So the business radios, how many radios did we end up buying there? The line item? I assume that's being used.
Yeah, I think they bought four for the linemen.
Calendars, the gas jumped quite a bit this month. Is that just timing of billing probably?
More or less, yeah. Our purchase electricity bill is the highest because it's July and the weather. It's always the highest in July.
Yeah, this was just gas card.
Yeah.
Do we have a running total scorecard, so to speak, on the smart source and where we are, what we've approved and what we have to approve again? The amount that, where we're at. We approved up to a certain amount and then we have to reapprove.
Yeah, and I got a total. I haven't checked to see what that total beginning was. I think it was 40 or something.
Are we close to having to do more? Curtis, do you know where we're at on that?
I actually don't, but I can try to look it up what we had in that last agreement.
Yeah. We should probably kind of keep a running total coming to us on the financials each month, just so we know where we stand.
That FSB capital line credit, it was 10,480. Is that us or is that communications?
Which page are you on?
On the bills.
Yeah, which claim page?
I didn't print it off. There's 2 pages.
They said it's
Did we get a handout from that? Or?
It's on page 1 of this.
That was a fee for doing business with them on the bonding.
That was a who?
That was a fee. That fee.
Okay, it's just, it's a capital line of credit, so I didn't know if that was a loan, if that why that was there.
That's the loan that they gave us, yeah.
Okay.
Are we gonna have issues, you know, like I said, we kinda started out with a rocky start, come audit time, we're gonna have probably 2 separate audits next year, and, you know, we're gonna have to have this pretty fine tuned here, on all these types of things that are,
I don't know if it'll be 2 audits. They can audit the municipal utilities, 2 departments on that.
We always have 2 separate audits anyway. We got the city as a whole, and then electric utility has been a separate component of that, but now I suppose the communications will be a 3rd component of that.
yeah, I agree, we should probably, by next month, have stuff squared away, so we don't have to wonder it on each month.
Cindy, did I understand you'll be the one setting up that new account?
I have to set up new line items, yes.
New line items. Okay, so it'll be your responsibility to have that done by the next meeting, next regular meeting?
I need to ask Tom how he wants them labeled, because they aren't typical electric expenses. They will be named something different, so I want to verify how he would like them labeled.
Yeah, I gotta put in this budget that we're gonna be looking at, and I try to do them by line item, but they might all fall under the same account. But I'm trying to track on where it's coming from, what equipment.
Of course, just like we do on all the line items that are in this piece of paper up here. Okay, that sounds good.
So it's pretty much, it's just gonna be one checking account for both utilities, it sounds like.
Yeah, they'll call it a checking account within our checking account for the communication.
Yeah, so we won't have any with farmers. I mean, they requested we check into it.
Yeah.
And we did.
What they end up saying, or what the city say.
The auditors?
No, about farmers' checking account.
We talked about having.
I wasn't at the last council meeting, so I didn't ask. I was absent. But I did ask the auditors if we needed the separate account. They said no, we didn't need a separate account, because as long as we have a separate fund set up, tracked by the fund, it's okay. It would be another bank statement that had to be reconciled, as opposed to we already have an electric utility checking account, which I could separate out, Fund 953 from 954, but it'd still be all in one checking account.
The only reason I brought it up, I thought it'd be easier if there were separate bank accounts, separate statements, because to me it'd be easier than if they're all commingled to try to split them as you go through one statement. And that's why I asked if we legally could do it. And I don't think we ever got the answer on that.
Well, again, was what, 5 or 10 years ago, when the council bid out banking services and Cedar Valley was awarded the bid. I mean, because they don't charge us anything.
I understand it. I just want to know if it was possible.
It's probably possible.
Isn't there something with getting the loan for farmers that it was an advantage to having an account there?
That's what they felt. That's why they asked if we could set one up. But to me, it's just easier if you got everything in one entity in one account, the other entity in another. You don't have to try to split them up all the time. But I'm trying to make your life easier, not ours. But
well, compared to the city side has 40, 50 funds in one pooled cash account. 2 accounts, 2 funds in the one checking account is cakewalk. Well, it's
okay. I guess you feel comfortable with that. We'll see how it goes.
Is it doable, reasonable to ask for like separate things next time? I mean, as far as
oh yeah.
Okay. Without having like, we don't have really any cash flow yet in September, but like if that makes sense to be able to have those things done.
Does anybody have any more questions about the invoices? I move that we accept the invoices with the understanding that next month we'll have separate line item accounts.
Any more discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Approve the agenda.
I got a question on the agenda, I guess. I talked to Mike Maloney, we were talking about the financing and stuff, and down under discussion expectations of Anderson Creek, he pointed out to me that's not in our service territory, so that's strictly a VCU item, it shouldn't be a municipal electric item.
Well, it's actually, it is a VMEU project because VMEU is putting in the main duct.
He said we wouldn't be if it's out of our service territory. That's what he said. Now,
Well,
he's the legal guy.
it's not in our electric service territory, but it's in the city limits, so we have, it's part of the city limits, so that's where we get to serve it.
Right, but once again, we're electric utility and we're a communication utility.
I know, but the electric utility is putting in the main trunk lines. You know,
Yeah, right up to that
not
property.
VMCU. VMCU is gonna lease.
Understand. He said because it's not our territory, it was,
I'll talk to him about that.
Okay.
It's something that basically we just need to have on a different agenda.
that
Is that
kind
what
of
you're
gets
getting
stuff in the
at?
right place.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I guess if that's not an issue.
Yeah, I put it in the electric one because the electric's home and the main trunk and the duct one, so.
I understand that, but he said we wouldn't own it if it's outside of our territory.
But it's in the city limits. I don't care if it's not in the electric utility thing, because we're not providing electricity to them,
Exactly.
but we can serve them with fiber.
Exactly, with a different utility.
Well, the electric utility is putting that fiber.
You talked to him.
I will.
He's the legal guy.
Check
I'll
out.
talk to him. I'll beat him into submission.
You might do the opposite, do you?
All right. Oh, I'm sorry. Receive and file communications, petitions, remonstrances. Anything? All right, now back to approving the agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. All in favor say aye.
Now,
Citizens input. Old business. A, resolution authorizing and approving a loan agreement and providing for the issuance of electric revenue bonds, Series 2019C.
Nothing changed in that from last time that the attorneys found, right?
well, the attorneys made little nitpick things that they sent back to Darcy, and they corrected language.
Nothing material.
The numbers didn't change.
So moved. Second.
You are moving to authorize the issuance of the bonds resolution. Is that what you're moving? Okay, we'll need a roll call on that.
Hainstock,
Yes.
Meyer,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Woodhouse,
Yes.
Elway.
Yes. All right, B, discuss expectations for Anderson Creek Estates development.
That one, did you pass that?
Yeah, I think you'll have a one-page document that says 2016 Iowa Code.
Chris Ward sent this to me. He said we're required to provide municipal services for anything that the city annexed, which they did annex that.
What?
So this is just basically saying that we need to provide them services that we have available to us. Would you be?
Yeah, well, we can't provide electric because it's not in our service territory,
Right.
but
But we can provide the
the
fiber.
water, the sewer, the roads, the fiber duct, and I think, let's see, Dave, you probably got some information on what we're saving by.
For a cost. For a cost.
Well, everything's going in for a cost, but.
Yeah, okay. I mean, you put in roads for a cost, you put in electric for a cost.
Yeah, and I think he'll have to, his agreement with the city, I don't think it's done, but it sounded like he would have to upfront the cost, and then he'll get 60% back or whatever it is when they get the TIF payments and stuff like that. So he never gets it all back.
That's got nothing to do with us.
The fiber does. It's a utility.
But not
service.
the TIF and the agreement
No,
with the city and the
all we
fiber.
have to do is put it in, and I don't know if the city's going to reimburse us. I didn't ask him that.
We've had this discussion twice now, and the recommendation was, what we said early on, we set the size of our territory. We're gonna run nodes close by out there, and then when the time comes, if there's development, then we work out agreement with the developers. And I'm opinion, the developer pays the cost, period. The REC runs power to you, you don't get any money back. The gas company runs power to you, you don't get any money back. You pay for it all. It's cut and dry. We don't run fiber out there. He certainly can run it, and if it's going to be cost savings of getting in this shared trench you're talking about, fine. But we've already passed that time frame, and we're certainly going to run fiber to him, but he's going to pay for it.
You misspoke on what REC charges for putting electricity in. They take the cost of installing it, divide it by the number of lots, and for every lot that is sold, you get that percentage back over time for the first 10 years.
Oh, sorry.
So it's not straightforward that they just pay.
Yes, it is. You pay, you get nothing back. That's an old policy you're quoting. Maybe you should get up to date on some of your things in the electric vote.
The different things, but I really don't know anything about this other than just what I'm taking at the moment. These are all thoughts off the top of my head. Is the difference between, and reading this here, is it the difference between like the REC and those are like more of a for-profit agency, for lack of a word? Or no? And this is a municipal? Am I wrong there? Business versus, no, I'm not, I'm just talking about services.
Oh, okay.
So like, yes, they have a development out there, and whoever services them versus, maybe I'm talking like crazy one, I don't know. But what would be the difference between us and somebody else doing something, a utility going out there, if they're more of a for-profit business and we're municipal? Does that make sense?
In a sense, there are some differences, but we also do set our policy, what our policy
Right,
is.
right.
We could run everything to everybody for free, or we can run everything to everybody for 100% they pay it. It's a policy we set up. And so
How's that policy been set?
we had some preliminary talks before you went aboard about where we were going to stop the territory.
So the
Stop
policy
it.
has not been set.
Correct.
Is it now somewhere?
No, we haven't done the policy yet. You know that. I think approving
Yeah,
some of them tonight.
yeah, that's one of the.
That's one of the policies we're looking at tonight.
Right.
Did you see your agenda?
That's my point, sir. Yes, I can read the agenda. The point is that it's not set yet. You're making it sound like it is set in stone, but the decision has been made. The decision has not been made.
So then how can we do this until the policy's set? Maybe we need to do the policy.
I don't even know what we're doing. It's the,
This is just discussed right now, kind of get an idea.
But and this little thing sounds like a threat to me of some sort. I don't know where we got this far. We had a discussion last meeting that we were going to try to decide which way to go with that. There was talk that we had to hurry up and do it because the trenches were open, which I don't quite understand what that means either. So as we get on the agenda to the policy, I think it's time we talk about that. But this line item is discuss expectations for Anderson Creek Estates development. Like I say, I don't know what that means. What's the expectations? This letter that Chris Ward gave us, that's crock. So I don't know if anybody want to make a motion on discussing expectations, whatever that means. Go ahead, but it doesn't mean anything.
Well, you stated very clearly that you think that they should pay. My expectation on this subdivision south of town, Anderson Creek Division, is that it is part of the city. And it's no different than any other part of the city that we're running the fiber to right now. Just because it's new and this concrete is just curing doesn't mean it's not part of the city. I wasn't part of your conversations where you talked about earlier you're going to run a node out there, so I can't say that. But I've been to the meetings listening to this. And I remember the meeting when you talked about that you were going to get it close out there, and that you would make the decision later. Well, this is later. My expectation is that fiber will be laid out there, that the trunk at least will be laid, because that is on the DMU agenda that we're on right now.
So I would interpret this as just a, hey guys, remember you have to make sure you do this, which I don't think there's any argument that we're not going to put it out there. It's just a matter of, so this is just kind of,
Who pays for it?
this is more of a viewpoint.
But who's gonna pay for it?
But who's going to pay for it is the question at hand, and that's a policy that's coming up. So expectations that we might have, we can discuss at the time of what we think that policy should look like.
I agree.
And then we get into that policy later in the
I agree.
agenda.
Yeah, like I say, the sign up's kind of moot point. right?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yeah.
Sure.
Dave Fridley, FAR. We've been working with the rural electric, and they're progressing along with their design, and they've offered to let VMEU put fiber in their trench. So there is a, I don't know if I want to say an open session, but we have a pretty significant cost savings if we do it when they do it. So, and I think I gave a $120,000 estimate. It's going to be less than that, because we're going to save some money on the main line. And there's no houses there, so there's no drops, so they'll be charged for that. So you can kind of, maybe, again, it's not final, but they've offered to let us do it, and then once we get a little further along, we can get a formal agreement. They've actually even sent an agreement, pretty basic agreement, saying if we want to work with them, and have our duct ready to go. I mean, we put the duct in, and then we'll put the cable in later. But
Can't the developer still pay for that?
oh yeah, that discussion is still,
That's-
because at some point then you go to the developer and then you say, okay, here's our cost, just like the electric. And I have talked to him, and I also know that he is getting, I don't know what the electric deal is, but I know the Alliant is giving him a rebate over time for upfront costs. Again, when I talked to him, I said that, it's a little different deal here, so I can't speak for that. That's, probably a legal question of what the city's already doing for you, what else, but, so I can get you costs for what it's gonna take, and it's gonna be less if we do it at that time. So we've got the note out there in preparation for when that happens, so now it's real. So within the city limits, we can, and literally, part of that cost that you're paying is to take extra duct only for the potential expansion. No different than what we did when we go to the edge of town. We take some extra duct, and in case we need to put extra fiber, then we just size the fiber as we go. So to do those first 33, we're set, and then if it takes off, wonderful. You decide that later what you're going to do on that stuff, especially anything that might get outside the city limits. Kind of like we did now. Everything's to the edges of town with the idea of take care of city, and we'll worry about other people.
I think our earlier discussions were with you and Michael both was our project guidelines were set. We had a certain amount of capital we were going to spend, and a certain number of revenues projected. And that's why we made that decision at the time. It wasn't in writing, Rich, but it was a decision to stop at this size of the territory, and any new expansion then would be on its own merit. And so, talked to Michael about that a couple of times. He's a staunch, stick with your original plan and let expansion come. This is kind of a gray area because it is a fairly new expansion, but it still is an expansion over what we set for our whole policy earlier on. So that's why I have no problem with getting that in when the time is right. It's just, I think we should get in negotiations with the developer, and I'm not just saying we should pay for the whole thing and put it in the ground like the rest of the city. It's an expansion of our territory, and it has to have an analysis made.
And I would only interject that I agree with that, except we've got to, when they go in, we have an opportunity, which is coming up pretty fast.
So you're looking for permission to say, yes, put the duct in.
Yeah, I mean, as far as making an amendment to the contract, that's what that amounts to.
Gotcha.
For us, for speaking for my piece of it, we amend the contract, put that base main line in, and then whenever his houses come in, now you're charging. Because again, in that case, it's a little different scenario than what we're doing here, which again will be another decision. Are you going to put duct into somebody in there that might not build a house till next year. Probably not. You're gonna set a charge up to put the duct in and fiber and hook up. That's just the luck of putting in your house, a year after the construction's done.
Yeah.
So those type of deals. But the main line is all the costs I'm talking about of getting out there, working with the rural electric in this case to get that done. Anyway, that's where they're
Before we
at.
move on, I want to make sure I understand something. You quoted a price, and that was for the main line. Does that include the duct and the fiber? So how much would be just the duct, which is what has to go in the trench? Approximately. We're not holding you to a number.
Probably with labor, maybe a third of that. So maybe it's 40 grand to do a very basic duct, and nobody sells a house because obviously we don't have to put a fiber in until somebody sells a house. So you could actually defer some of that cost.
That's what I was thinking.
Oh, wait a minute! I gotta be careful there.
We could pay
No.
40,000.
Let me double check with my guys, make sure because I believe his cost includes putting the cable on the main line. But I will double check that.
Yeah, I'd
while
like to
we're
see
sitting
the cost just to see what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I feel like
But I believe, because my total cost was based on putting a fiber in the main line. So if we're duct only, I can check that if he's online. But
It'd be a shame to miss the opportunity to get the duct in the trench.
yeah, I mean that's their biggest cost: the labor cost and the duct, and then we put the fiber. But I don't know the exact. But that's a good question.
And they have so much money to work with too.
Oh,
So I mean,
absolutely.
you can't just
Absolutely.
do everything that comes up, and all of a
Absolutely.
sudden you can't finish the project. So it'd be nice to know the numbers.
And when would the drop dead date be of having to have an answer to you, Dave?
Well, it's based on we haven't got a firm date of when the electric's going in, but probably in the next 30 days or so. I'm guessing they're going to be doing the electric. I will confirm that too.
I think we should have the developer here all ready to have these discussions. Rather than just a threat letter from Chris Ward, I think we should have the developer here to start negotiations. So if we need a special meeting, do that, just do a special meeting.
So my understanding is that this discussion part is a two-part thing. One is that you're asking for permission to lay the ductwork, whenever that window opportunity is, to save everyone money in the long run, and two, to kind of service the new area that's been coming. Do we know how many lots are sold already on that property? Like, are we expecting this is going to be developed within a year, within?
I think he had 8 out of
what's the
33 sold
potential?
now.
8 of the 33. Okay, so I was just thinking, what are the
That's the last
potential
number.
As of about
customers
2,
right
3,
away? Like,
when are we talking?
yeah.
2 months ago, probably maybe. Said he had 8 sold.
And then
Sign
the
the
second
bank
part
says
is
two.
we're trying to figure out is who's going to
I
pay
was
for
gonna say,
it.
that one meeting I attended, there was 4.
I heard there were 3, so.
So a whole gamut of numbers then. Okay, so that's not a very definitive information as to whether or not we'll have customers right away. Whether it'll pay for itself.
You might have 20 houses
Yeah.
out there, nobody signs up for it.
We have
Anything's
that one now.
possible.
Yeah. Okay.
Again, I would just soon not give the okay to do it, not knowing who's going to pay for it. If we give the okay, and then it's pretty easy for the developer to say, well, you authorize me to do it. So I think we should have a special meeting, some sort of communication, negotiation with the developer, see what he's willing to put out or not, or put in our policy, one or the other. But I know what you're saying, Kim, I appreciate it. And I agree, we don't want to hold Dave saying, hold it up. If we have an opportunity, we want to take care of it. Let's do it as a financial, economic decision to make, not just say we'll do it. So I think we have time. If we have 30 days, we can make it happen.
We'll confirm that date and get back to you.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly when they're scheduled because he was a little ahead of himself with some of the stuff he wanted about a month ago. So
Looks pretty quiet out there right now.
Well,
so.
because he was wanting to get the utilities in first. And I think between the electric utility and myself, we've convinced him that's not the way to do it. We got to get the curb and gutter in first, so you're not tearing up our utilities before we ever hook anybody up. So we've got John kind of turned around a little bit there, saying we'll get in there, but get your paving done and your curbs in and sewer water, and then we'll come in at our level and put that in.
Yeah,
So I think it's just like anything else in any development. There's a little give and take back and forth. So we may have on to keep the open communications with the electric utility to make sure they don't get ahead of us, so I'll work hard on that. We'll see if we can straighten that
All
out
right.
too.
Just leave it at that then for tonight. Thanks for your presentation. Anything else on that one, Chief? All right, consider D.C. Consider monthly electric adjustment. Good motion.
What was the point? 0015?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion.
All right, motion second. Motion second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay. New business. Receive and file July financial report. Should be the bottom of the
Yep, I
electric
got it
one.
now. Yeah.
By the time you got through that loan thing, 25 pages of that, you get down to the meat.
So once again, this is both utilities, basically. Everything's combined into one.
Basically, there is a separate set of pages with Fund 954 just showing the proceeds from debt.
Motion?
So moved.
Second.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? B, discuss on existing generation site and new generation at 65 kV substation.
This one. Okay, you got another set of pages that says review of generation.
Yeah.
I'm not expecting any, there's no decision making on it. I'm just submitting a report.
Appreciate it. Thanks, I appreciate it. Excited for your report, Tom.
Scott was able to stop down in my office this morning and help me sift through some of the 100-year, 500-year events. And
No flood, Scott, right?
Yeah, no. No.
Guaranteed. Well, guaranteed for tonight.
Oh.
We'll pass that.
Oh, not next week?
Covered today. But there's 4 different options there. They all have different impacts to the city and the city's budget. And there's one in there that the consultant or FEMA or STAR 2 didn't bring up, and I think it's one that we could start with. It may not be the one that we finish out with, but it gives some protection more than what we got right now. And that's basically either using the Heskels we got or getting some the rock face out there, get it installed, leave it, and we got a barrier in case we have a flash flood. So, and then if we have to stack them, we can, but we're not sitting out there trying to lay 2 rows under duress, knowing that we got a time limit. So, and I think, this is kind of under the assumption that the fire department will probably be gone, that building will be gone. I mean, the consultant had different ways. They could have surrounded the power plant. They could have surrounded the power plant and the electrical distribution building. We were initially surrounding the fire department as well, and then running the Heskels up, which still would be the plan. These wouldn't be the final. It would just be the initial start, so we're not under that time gun that we can't keep up, especially if there's a flash flood upstream of us. I think the flash flood happened downstream, and Cedar Rapids got the bulk of that. And the cost for this isn't all that high. I've been having trouble getting the guy from, the last guy I was talking from HESCO, I think, left, and they gave me somebody else. I tried to invite him to come, and I don't know if they're too busy dealing with other flood issues, but I may have to see if I can contact them by Zoom or something and see what products they maybe have that we don't know about. Having that stuff out there, I'm concerned about the ultraviolet rays on the stuff, and I know Mid-America laid those things out along their roadside, and I never understood why they would just put them up and leave them and abandon them, basically. Now I understand why they put them up and left them, because they don't want it to go through the hassle of taking them down and putting them up, so they just left them there. They're kind of off into the area where the public doesn't get anyway, so it's not like they're seeing. This would be a little bit different because you'd see them. And they had costs in there for putting up the T-frame, and whether you went 100, there's an incremental cost to get to the 500. I'm still a little concerned about the amount of room from the riverbank to where this would be, just how stable that is for putting something deep down in. They'd have to drive some pilings down pretty far to make it stable. That doesn't mean it won't wash away underneath. I think the fact that we put the sidewalk out there is definitely a helpful thing, because where we didn't have the sidewalk, it was starting to show signs of washout, and you still have water moving below grade, which comes into the floor drains that we're going to still have to pump. Then we could put in a pumping, more permanent pumping station if we had to, but if the fire department's gone, then it's basically protecting the plant. If the plant, even if it takes on water, because we got that secondary electrical system up high, which I think it is above our 100-year flood, we don't lose the grid, we aren't going to lose power in town. So we might lose generation capability, we might not. We can survive getting the generation probably back like we've done in the past, and we won't lose our credit, our capacity credit that we get, which I've got in there on that chart. Right now with the existing plant, the capacity credit outweighs the plant staff expenses by about $150,000 each year. So at least, you know, even though it's sitting there and it's not used all the time, it is helping us financially.
Yeah, plant staff expenses, what? That's
Just the labor and the benefits.
okay.
I didn't put any maintenance in because there was going to be maintenance in either one. Whether we relocated, we'd have maintenance out there, maintenance contract, so I just said the maintenance was a wash. So it's basically just compared the capacity revenue credit that we got against the staff labor and benefits.
Can you get those maintenance numbers? I mean, are they easily pulled up?
Well, yeah, we know what we do for maintenance on the unit, and we don't do all that much.
Parts, I mean, you know, some of the old girls, you know, take some kind of expensive parts from time to time. That's down the road. That's long term, harder and harder to get parts and everything.
Yeah, well, I think he's got spare parts and all that, and yeah, I don't. I can get the numbers that we've been spending. I don't see it being a huge thing right now. If something fails so catastrophically that you can't use it anymore, then that one would come out of service, and then you'd have to decide, are you going to replace it or not? Do you need it? We got more capacity now than the load in the town. Hopefully that will change when we get fiber in it. We maybe attract more businesses and need that extra capacity to get used.
Probably the logic would probably be, if you went with the cats, that you would just hire just contract maintenance. So you could probably get just a flat maintenance fee.
Sure.
To compare that against your historical parts and labor and stuff on the maintenance on these old drills.
I can check with, I think Amana probably does that, and see what they wind up paying per KW or megawatt, whatever they do, and see what their costs are.
What does Wheeler say, you know, as far as our old girls? Is he still pretty happy with them?
Well, I think they've done a good job of keeping them operating and maintaining it. Kevin had the opportunity to go up to New Hampton and work with their plant their main guy is retiring after 30 years, and they were having problems, and he went up there and basically told them what they were doing wrong, which they weren't firing him quite right, and nobody knew any better, and the guy that was retiring evidently, this is the way he's always done it. Well, he's done it wrong for 30 years, and so Kevin helped straighten them out, and they don't have that issue anymore. Kevin's a very valuable resource to us and really other plants, because they just don't have that knowledge that he's gained over the years, and he keeps himself involved, and he goes to some of these conferences and they have him speak because of his experience in that. So if he ever wants to be a consultant when he gets done here, he probably would be able to do that pretty easy. But
What if somebody hires him away, then who are we gonna hire, that 30-year guy from?
no, he told me he'd never leave. But we have an agreement, he can't leave, so.
Yeah, no, they do a good job down there, but you'll have to look forward to seeing what will our expertise be down the road in 10 years and something like that. This thing started out, we've talked off and on about looking at the river and how it keeps threatening us and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's just that, I like those old girls as better than anybody else. I've always used them all my life, and I like them, but I hate to abandon it, but there could come a time, and this thing started up by having those 5 units for sale, come to the same spot, so you had an opportunity to really just get 10 megawatts set here, boom, in one fell swoop, spend the money, and one of them got sold, so that cuts it down a little bit, but that's why I thought it was worth taking another look at again, and I pretty much agree with just glancing at your thing, your report.
That doesn't mean we want to offer him what he's asking either, because he didn't give us any break for 5, and the price stayed the same for 4, so. And I doubt if anybody's dying to go buy those right now.
But they're rated right, so they're clean.
Yeah, they are new enough that they meet the requirements, so we wouldn't have issues on environmental issues like that.
So why do you say people wouldn't be lined up to buy them? I wonder. Somebody just looking for any generation? Or?
I don't know, because there's been so many places out there that have gotten rid of their generation, and now that they don't have it, and they're not allowed, and some of them got into contracts where even if they did have it, they're not allowed to use it, and which is ridiculous. If you don't have power in town and you got units, I'm turning them on. I don't care what that contract says. But they want to control, and they just have you there just to get the capacity credit that they're probably getting. And I don't know if they're passing it on, but I'm amazed at some of the agreements some of these other munis got in with places, not RPGI, but similar ones that are like WPPI and some others that they're not in Iowa for headquarters. And somebody didn't do a very thorough job of checking them out.
I think you said last meeting 2 years ago that we rarely are running at all, have to run, because ITC has kind of cleaned up their system and stuff. Is that still right? You think that you weren't sure we had to run since you've been here? Is that
well, we've ran.
We ran from ISO and stuff like that.
I think at least twice, and it's always an extreme cold, most likely extreme heat. This last one was an extreme cold, which was unusual. We didn't have gas available, so we had to run on diesel. Not everybody's got dual fuel. So we have the benefit of, since we got dual fuel, if gas isn't available, we can still run on diesel. And so it's actually pretty fortunate that they're dual fuel units, because not everybody in RPGI can run on diesel, and if they don't have gas available, they're out of luck.
But we haven't had to run due to an outage. That's just they needed us to run? Or
Well, if somebody was to fall off the line and the grid become unstable, they would contact you, and they would do that locally. There's times when Amana and somebody else that's bigger than us, they get called first potentially, and they've been on and nobody else has been on, so they bring on what load they want to bring on. It's not like it's not like they can bring us up and we can jump on real fast and then jump right off. I mean, if they're going to bring us on, they need to leave us on long enough for it to not harm the equipment coming up fast and running and then shut it down. So I think this last run in January, we actually did run longer than normal, and in fact I had to write a letter because 2 of those units were out of compliance during a 24-hour run. but they never had to do it because they were running strictly on oil, which wasn't as clean. Normally we'd be running on gas, and would have that issue. But we didn't get in trouble for that because I said, hey, we were dispatched around, we ran, and this is what happened. And they basically say, okay.
Our purpose for having generation is backup generation for outages to keep the town, swinging the town.
Yeah.
And those just are getting rarer and rarer all the time, which is good news. And Kevin's ready if we do have outages. So you have a two-pronged problem. Your contract with RTGI and MISO makes you know, it's economically beneficial to you to run when they call you to run. You get your capacity credits. So you got two things. You have generation just to keep us. Vinton has been spoiled over the years that we just power stays on. A lot of towns like Alliant towns that don't have backup, when the line goes down, they're down. And it isn't just 15 minutes, they're down for hours or whatever. So that's our main purpose for having generation. But then these others is more of a financial thing, plus to have them. So.
And I think, you know, they're going to shut down the payload plant. I don't know if that's going to impact the area because there won't be base load here.
It might be called on to run more. It shouldn't affect the actual outages, but you might run more.
I know, I can't remember where it was, that some of these units, they don't like to track, especially with wind. Wind fluctuates so much that the units are going up and down, and some of them don't track very well. Where these units here can fly through it a lot easier and don't have the problem. So I don't think, you know, I don't know what percentage they got wind out there now. On islands might be 40% or something, which is pretty high. Nationwide, it's not near close that, but Warren Buffett's trying to go 100% wind with the company. You know, those credits he can.
Well, one of the reasons we can is we have people running them. Most of these other cat ones are just outlying, just remote things. They just come on automatically, and it's a little bit harder to follow those and everything. So.
Yeah, and you have to make sure that the digital controls all work, and if they don't, you're calling somebody in that specializes in it.
Okay, real good. Well, thanks for the report. We can study it and talk more about it. But the urgency, like I say, once that one unit got sold, they say, yeah, 4 is kind of nice, but it was kind of. I think it doesn't hurt to keep watching how things are trending. Thank you. All right, C, consider Vinton Shellsburg Community Schools request for parking lot lighting maintenance.
I had a call from, is it Les? Yeah, at the school. And I talked to him about it, and I said, well, I'll bring it up to the board because they're going to have to decide. Their bucket truck has got enough problems with it, they're not going to spend any more money on it. So they're looking for somebody that can take care of lighting in the parking lot and change things out when need be. I guess personally, if we were the only deal in town, that'd be an easy decision. I guess being a public entity, I'm not sure I want to compete with the guys in town that have that equipment that are trying to make a living doing it. So I mean, that would be that's a concern. But you know, we could definitely do it. Just you know, that's why I brought it up, because it has to be a policy thing. You guys decide whether you want to be involved in that or not.
Are they checking with other people?
I don't.
Or just us?
I don't know. As far as I know, no. I mean,
So it'd be kind of important to know, because if nobody else wants to do it, that'd be one thing.
Well,
But
yeah,
if there's somebody else
yeah.
in town that does want to do it.
I mean, I could ask them that. I didn't get the impression they were, but I think there's probably at least 1 or 2 in town that have the ability to probably contract with them.
I would think before we decide whether we would or wouldn't do it, we'd want to know that.
All right.
My opinion.
Well, I can check.
Just check with them.
Go
Yeah.
back to more information.
All right. Reports.
Okay, they're still been trimming trees. We get calls from people saying they got stuff in their lines, and they're usually on our list already. It's just takes them a while to get through it all. We're helping provide some temporary electrical service with things at Vinton Unlimited for the celebration activity, so we've been assisting with that. The gen plants continue doing their general maintenance. They got that boiler inspected and it's ready for another year of service. They gotta do the annual inspection and get the state boiler inspector to give them a certificate for another run. They had been helping in unloading equipment and materials for the fiber project out of town with the reels, and then some of the stuff that's come in here, Kevin's been sending over, I think, Jeff Long and Jeff Kenny once in a while to help with the stuff in the hut, and the guy that's doing that's getting things pretty much set up to go. Primarily what we've been doing, I guess the rest of the stuff is for the other utility. That's about all I got on the electric.
Okay, Cindy? All right, so motion to adjourn? Sure. Motion, is there a second? Second. Motion second, any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right. The Municipal Communications Utility Board of Trustees. Call to order, please.
Barron,
Here.
Ainstock,
Here.
Hellwig,
Here.
Woodhouse,
Here.
Meyer, here.
Approve the meeting minutes of the 0709, 7:23, and 8:7. Moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and second, any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Approve invoices.
That's a typo, sorry.
Yeah, that's there's no such thing.
We've already done
No
that.
such thing, we'll keep that. Receive and file communications, petitions, or musts. Approve the agenda. Motion.
Sure.
Move second, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Citizens input. Yes.
Hi, Scott Hansen. Just want to say I'm very pleased so far with what's been going on with the communications utility. Had a great experience signing up online. Patriot Communications was great. Made a call, told them they called about my personal residence, and I told them I had another residence right behind me that I just purchased, and they said we'll do them both at the same time, so that saved me some time. The workers are very good, very diligent. No complaints, so I just want to say thanks. You're on the right track.
I think we've all probably had that experience with them. They're really good people. Other citizens? Old business. 7A report, status report of partnerships.
Right, most of a number of them, I think I reported last time with Patriot, CFU and Consortia. We've got all those done. There's a few that are still under review. One is the WIN agreement, and we got iMine agreements, the internet service, the video transport, billing, and the operations and tech, and we're still kind of sifting through. I'm concerned that we're getting two independent, reliable systems for the internet through WIN and iMon, and I don't know if we got that completely nailed down yet to do physically. I don't know, Dave, you got any input?
They share some of the same paths, iMon and WIN, so we've had a bunch of calls. We changed the meet point where we were going to meet with iMon, which was a good deal. It's closer to town, so it's saving money. So that's the good news. So basically, after a few phone calls, I don't know how many Corey was on. I wasn't on them. I've said, so we basically went back and said, because of some of the things that and where we're meeting now, there's confusion. So it's okay. iMon, we need a diagram that shows exactly how do we get to Cedar Falls. WIN, we need a diagram that shows exactly how we get to, you get to Cedar Falls. You know, how much is aerial, how much is buried, because there's confusion on my part because I thought we had a lot more buried than we are. But they both lease from Windstream and others, and you know that's how they do their business. So I'm not scared of it. I just want to know that we have diverse routes. So that's the task we set back to the two of them because they do interact a lot. So that's good and bad. Maybe we're saying show us, you guys work it out, because you know each other's routes. We want to make sure we have diverse routes out of here, period. And we'd like to know, for Vinton's sake, how much of that routes are aerial versus buried. Now, these are not poles typically like you guys have, they're the bigger, so less likely to get blown down. But again, it's still aerial, so there's that risk. So we just want to, we're getting that information straightened out. I think we finally have all the exact meet points. For goodness, we're talking several, a couple $100,000 we can save by meeting them, on the new meet points. So I'm happy with that. And, with the way things, with all the extra signups and stuff, we're going to be pushing that budget big time. But that's kind of a good problem to have. But anyway, so that's where we're at with I'm on Win.
If I can just add to that a little bit. The one thing with Win, and actually I'm intimately familiar with the routes because I was working at McLeod USA when we sold that route to Iowa Health Systems that became Unity Point, that became Win, that became Paytech. Anyway, we've been working with some engineers at Win because their original design carried in on the aerial, and I believe it went to the former Braille School, and that was really their only path into town. So we're doing some fiber swaps with them, so we both basically have 2 routes into town. So you've got your physical connections, which it gets taken out by a tornado, or we've actually had a woodpecker infestation in Cedar Rapids that's been causing us issues last year. They didn't show up this year, luckily. Which squirrels are normal, woodpeckers are odd, and legally can't do anything about it. There's also the kind of the logical operations of the internet at a higher level, so that's your routers and your things like that, and how that works. So I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but kind of the original intent of having that second provider, even though we've got a ring, so there's no one single point of failure in and out of town, the second provider was more of that higher level, that logical, if the whole network blows up, even if we're physically connected, it could in theory happen. That said, and the roads elude me, but if you go a little bit west out of town, I believe it's E22, but I'm not for certain on that. I'll look at a map. Once it gets a little bit out of town, the WIN network, Wisconsin Independent Network, and the IMON network, it is the exact same path into the Cedar Falls data center, and it's the exact same path into the Cedar Rapids data center. So it's a one neck in Cedar Falls, it's in Volta in Marion. So once actually you leave town, there's, from a physical diversity standpoint, it's the same dark fiber. And the way that works, it's one sheath. We own the rights to X amount of strands in that sheath. They own some. Windstream owns the sheath. But that's kind of what we're running into. The other thing with Win is Windstream actually a week and a half ago changed their policies on where you can tap into, so that kind of strung them up a little bit. So we've been trying to help Win at least have 2 routes, albeit when they leave town they're going to be the same. I'm not sure if there's anything to do about that as far as your options there, but that's kind of just what you're looking at, is when you leave town, that Win traffic physically is in the same, whether it's a sheath or a conduit or what have you, it's the same.
How long are we in the same sheet?
A mile and a half out of town, the rest of the way.
Okay. And it's all aerial?
I can't speak to how much is aerial and how much is underground, and that's not a constant either. It's a variable there. I drove it actually a few months ago, but my memory's iffy on that. And it's one of the things we brought up early on, is when Win was in the discussion, I kind of threw out to provide that logical diversity, physical diversity, not so much. But
That's not what we were thinking, correct?
That's not my understanding. Okay.
And just, you go to Cedar Falls, you go to Cedar Rapids, is that 2 separate loops then, or is that just for separate services?
once we get, so the way our network is, and I can't speak for how Windstream operates beyond those two, or I'm sorry, Wynn operates beyond those. But so once we get to Marion, that's a whole myriad of different routes out of there, and then the same likewise in Cedar Falls. And they go to internet drains in Minneapolis and Chicago and different paths like that. So there's a myriad, but actually diversifying for Wynn to diversify away from our primary routes. And again, that's the routes we're going to be using to transport the CFU video. That's the routes we're going to be transporting the internet video and everything. So it's protected and routed from a full diversity standpoint. With the contracts, I don't know if there's another provider in town to look at that would be different. I don't know. But if that's your goal is physical diversity, that's something that Wynn, to my understanding, and I don't want to speak for them, but from my understanding, that wouldn't be something they'd offer. Again, it's about a mile-ish and a half outside of town. We'd actually be, the way we're working out for Wynn right now to save them money, which in turn saves the utility money, is working on splicing together to get in those routes is some of what we're looking to do for them.
But bottom line, we're in the same sheet.
Yep.
And even would have been, even with this other way route, or is that total?
Evidently.
Yeah, what we're working on with them, is exclusively from that path into town is what we're working with them on.
So I'm curious, that mile and a half, I understand that, if that gets cut, we're done.
There's two diverse, so there's...
Both would have to be cut at the same time.
Correct, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's an auto failover.
Once we get a mile and a half out, it runs both directions to Marion and Cedar Falls.
Right.
And technically, both of those have to be cut at the same time to cut us out.
I can speak for my network, yes. I assume Wynn would have the logical to be able to make that happen.
So
correct.
ultimately, we do have two separate routes. Unfortunately, there's one point where they're doing together. If that spot would be damaged.
Well, there wouldn't be
Still
any
physical
one
separate?
cut that would take either of us out.
Okay.
The issue is it's capital going towards as much diversity as possible from the primary, which inherently be us because we're doing voice, which is customers might disagree, but from a regulatory standpoint, voice is still more important. But that's the tricky part is you've got the logical diversity. So as an example, 4 or 5 years ago, Windstream did something catastrophic on their network that gets really in the weeds, and I can draw a really boring diagram to show you how it happened, but it literally took out their entire IP network across the country. It wasn't due to cuts, it was due to a bad thing put in one router that then propagated through the whole network and took down their call center so they couldn't even field calls. But so it's not impossible for that to happen. So that second provider does carry a benefit, just unfortunately physical diversity from us isn't going to be one of them, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
So I'll need to work on that.
And USA has fiber in town. We haven't talked to them specifically, but that if we wanted to look at physical diversity, that's an option too.
That's what Rich was asking. So on Cedar Falls and Marion, those can supply everything on each one of those.
Yeah, so if Cedar Falls went down, that whole thing would still be running, and if Marion went down, and that's the internet, that's also the voice. So like our core switch, for example, is located in the Marion data center. We do have a fully redundant backup system in Cedar Falls, and that's operational. And you might have a different one. That's actually your primary in Cedar Falls. We have to design that yet, but everything would be completely different. The way we're taking the video out of Cedar Falls, it goes a little bit more of a roundabout to maintain the diversity. That'll actually it'll go the normal route from Cedar Falls down. The other way, we have to actually take that over to Dubuque and down to Muscatine, and it's a long, expensive way to get there. That was the only way we could do, because video traffic has different requirements. Internet is kind of like water, you put it in a pipe and it'll get there. But yeah, so everything is kind of everything's diversified from an IMON standpoint anyway.
So Dave, what's your concern?
I just have to straighten this out. Because in fact IMON has a diverse routing. We're adding IMON as a second provider, So if something catastrophic happened, you know, whatever, we still would have internet connection, for example, which is what everybody screams the most about, as well as video between those two. Video you're still going to be bringing down on a route, because you can do it multiple ways, but in effect you're going to have one big feed for video. So it, you know,
Well, actually, in the video, we'll be bringing 2 routes.
Two, but then we, you know, get in the weeds with, we have
Sure,
to switch, we
sure.
it gets to be a hassle, but anyway, we can do it.
Well, the
So,
goal was, with WIN, was to have redundant internet bandwidth.
have a second, yeah, a
But
second,
it's on
basically even a
the
second
same
provider.
path, then we might want to find somebody else to
Yeah,
get that internet.
and it really affects WIN more than anything else, because
Right.
I'm sitting there going, okay, if you're really not offering me a physical diverse path from IMON, then I really don't care what your rate is, because we really don't really have any more diversity than we had before, other than from an electronics point of view of, you know, if electronics go down and something catastrophic happens to electronics, we'd have WIN. But, okay, so,
Ideally, we'd have both an alternate internet pipe and an alternate
No.
route to the internet pipe.
I mean, it really gets down to, okay, we got the 2 providers talking to each other, so saying, oh, wait a minute, we have a little problem here. Okay, Houston, we'll take care of it. Doesn't stop anything that we were going to do anyway, as far as our primary concern. Primary provider was IMON. You know, so I got to figure another way to, if we're going to have a secondary one. And we have options. Again, the USA is sitting here right in town. I just got to get, they have different connections, but we got to get to Cedar Falls from there to do, you know, for whatever. So we'll work on that a little bit. It's more of a headache than a big problem, but we'll take care of it. And maybe we can work something out with WIN too. I mean, they got a good lead engineer, and he's doing a good job. We'll see what Pete can come up to. Okay. There's always something.
That's it on,
Operations, where are we at on that?
well, I gotta send some stuff back to Corey, and I kind of been waiting to get this diversity thing hammered out first. So I'll be sending him comments back like we had talked about. It's there's not enough information out there on what texts are going to be used, where they're going to reside, and the fact that we'll want to be able to hire them at the end of the contract if they're any good. So that's a preview of what's coming in my email.
The poaching provision. Just don't send it to me until after I've had morning coffee.
Well, we've been wanting to get that operations one going, so we keep talking about it. That's always the one that's never on our agenda, and we never get.
And just to be that, and a big chunk of that weight, to be fair, was on me to kind of get some of that. That's what we've been working on, kind of the 5 different agreements. On a good faith that, so we've been spending a lot of capital on getting certain things put in and ordered. There's certain functions that I just can't do. I can't hire the primary Vinton guy until certain things are done. So time's starting to get to the essence on that. So I just want to make sure that, you know, we can still hit the deadlines that we're still gunning for what you'd probably view as the best case scenario for a timeline. We're viewing as the worst case scenario as a timeline, but we're making sure we can still hit that. We just want to make sure things are continuously moving and making progress, so we can kind of, because there's a lot of back end system, and not even so much the IT side, but the systems and programming and things like that to get set up with. So.
And are we making progress? You say you want to be making progress. Are we?
We've pretty much got everything done to the point that we can, for the most part. One big piece is working with CFU on the Minerva, and that's going to kind of come down to the equipment that's also ultimately going to get placed in the hut. So once that's done, we have a diagram. We're planning on working with Dave's team and Mike's team at CFU. There's a lot of the physical connections to that. Pretty easy, really. The software to make that work with provisioning systems and billing systems that's where we have to get the $350 an hour programmers, and it's a lot of labor. And it's not like installing Word on a computer. It's complex with lots of different organizations. So the sooner we can kind of get some of that information, the sooner we and CFU and other folks can kind of get that moving. So
Do you have those meetings set up with them already, or?
Not yet. I'm waiting. CFU is looking to identify exactly what equipment's going to be in the hut, and then we're going to. I've got a call on to Mike. He may have been out last week, so I wasn't able to get a hold of him. But once we get the equipment identified that we're going to terminate to, that's going to kind of belly on some of what CFU, as far as their design would be and things like that. So. Kind of, I guess, is the official answer on that. It's a bit pending until we get a bit more information on the equipment to be placed in there. So,
all right. Status report on site surveys and construction progress.
Well, last time I checked, the last crowd fiber was number 1,558 minus 26, so we have 1532 survey signups requested, and I don't remember, they had 100, I don't know if they had 150 done last Thursday. What they got accomplished this week, we'll find out Thursday, I guess.
They give us an update every Friday, or every Thursday. There's about 17,000 foot of duct to put in.
Yeah, I think when it was 14,000, it was 50% of the main loop, so we're beyond that now.
And more crews are coming in as we speak.
Yeah, it seems like
crew.
there's been a big jump here in the last couple of days.
Pardon me?
Seems like more of them.
Yeah, they're just kind of, well, which is good because then we can get rolling and they get organized. They're coming off other projects, but we could hit 6 or 7 crews pretty easily. And, so they're still planning on being done with the duct, before winter shuts us down. Once we get one of those early ones, but I think we're in pretty good shape. They're rolling pretty good.
They were running down 4th Street this week. Rain kind of slowed things down on Monday, but you can see the trucks there today. Stopped all the parking on that first half of that, and then they're going to swap over to the other side and get it coming from the other direction. So
As I walked over here, they were just poking up at the intersection right over here, so that's half done.
And they're putting in pedestals, and if you notice those big concrete they're actually not concrete, but they're handholds. They're putting those things in now. Did you have a line as a separate item on your agenda? Or is that part of this?
that'll be in my report.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay. Not, has there been any real citizen complaints? I've only had a couple that just minor. The truck was blocking my driveway. Pardon me?
How come you did my neighbors but not mine?
Well, they have been coming up to our inspectors and to the crew. Then Tom provided handouts to contact this entities. So between central contractors and my inspectors, we're handing these cards out. Say just do this here, and so they're selling on the job, which always happens. People come out that say, I didn't know anything about this, so and that happens every job. I've never seen it not happen. When did this all start? Well, okay, now they see the crews, so that's good. I mean, your percentage sign-up rate just for the duct alone is blowing my mind. I've got to tell you, I've never seen anything like it.
I had a lady call me the other day, and she was like, all my neighbors have had it done. I was on vacation, did I miss it? And I was like, I don't think so. Did they call you, leave a message? No? Okay, well, they'll still call you, don't worry. Here's the number to call, and you can set up an appointment. Okay.
Yeah, I only had one customer complaint with Patriot. They set up a time and didn't show up. I don't know, did they contact you to find out what happened?
It was me personally. They scheduled it for Friday from 1 to 3. He waited around the house 2 hours. Nobody showed up. Nobody called. He called not to voicemail, said let's reschedule, but it got done today. So a couple days later, we're fine. But
Did they bring cookies to them?
no, but the guy, I think it was Logan.
Yeah.
He apologized. It's okay.
That's
Did
about
you have
it.
Casey?
What?
Did you have Casey today?
Yeah.
That's who I had today. Nice guy.
Alright. That's enough of that. Status report on office site.
Well, we got Angie Whitner hired. She's going to start tomorrow. And I'm still waiting on a lease from Rick Zemfer. and we've started doing some cleanup on the carpet that is going to stay in there, and haven't got a hold of the guy that was going to do the tile work for me, but things are moving along. We've getting equipment picked out. We'll probably be we'll be up and using the office here yet this month. I just don't know which day. I don't think we're going to come up with a big advertisement to the community because we don't want to have the floodgates breaking the door down when they're trying to come in there. But we'll take care of people. I've got the phone. I haven't got the phone in there. I'm still waiting on CenturyLink to get some lines so we can get that set up.
Just out of curiosity, did you check with like one of the cell companies to see if they do a hotspot and cell phone?
No, I didn't. You got someone in mind that you'd recommend?
I shall not recommend any of the local ones. You pick anyone you want.
So just as an alternative to signing a contract with MediaCom.
Well, that too. But I know another party that's doing that because
I think they were just offering a service till like the end of the year, so it wasn't like they were forcing us to do anything. So
just that a cell phone.
I had the girls call
and
do it so that they didn't know who was asking for it. I don't know if, and they probably contacted CenturyLink out of another state, so it wasn't anybody local. So hopefully they don't put it together.
All right, anything else? D, approved policies.
So you have several policies to consider, and these are policies that you need to approve at some point. The rates are also a policy, but I see that is there as a separate item, so I would say separate that out and deal with that just under E. The policies then you would be looking at under D are the acceptable use policy, the internet acceptable use policy, and that is the one that spells out customers' rights and obligations and the things they can and cannot do with your internet service. So you have to have that in place so that you have to tell people how you manage your network, so that if there's any question about filtering content or blocking content or anything like that, it's all spelled out. That also has the digital copyright rules in it, so customers know that they cannot steal copyrighted material from the internet. If they do, you have the right to turn them off, because what will happen is you will get a notice, well, you through probably IMON will get a notice that customer XYZ at this, or customer at this IP address downloaded this movie illegally. And then you have to tell that customer, don't do that anymore. And then after a certain period of time, so that to protect yourself, you have to turn that customer off if they don't follow the rules. So that's pretty much what the acceptable use policy is. All of these policies are really modeled on some of the other municipals that have come before you. Vinton is the latest behind Indianola, Waverly, and Cedar Falls, and some of the others. So most of the language here is pretty boilerplate from what those other communities have put in place. So that's the acceptable use policy. The other one that you have is your privacy policy. Again, very boilerplate, but it has some things in it basically talking about the type of information that you collect in order to give someone service, stating that you will keep that information private and will not disclose that information to anybody outside of the company or an agent. In this case, an agent would be the people at IMON that are doing billing and customer service and support for you. So it also, has internet and email privacy practices, etc. on there. So that one's a fairly short one. There was really only 3 pages of content there. The other one that is kind of outside of the rates is communications policy. So that's kind of the overall policies within the utilities. And that one is the one that has the thing you were talking about before, is what is our policy on extending service and new developments. So if you want to go to page on that document, page 14, is really where that's addressed. It's under subsection 20.1, communication system extension policy within city limits and or electric utility service territory. 20.1.4 deals with new developments. And again, this is language mostly unchanged from what we did in Indianola a year ago. And under that policy, that spells out how you're going to treat new new developments, just like the one that you've been talking about, the one that is going in, that is going to be built this year. So this is the way the policy is written here, and again, because it's boilerplate, you get to decide. But it basically says you will extend facilities at your cost to properties within newly platted areas within the city of Vinton or the electric service territory. In this case, it's not both, right? It's just city limits, not electric service territory. Provided that your system, your fiber network is near the property and, in your judgment, enough customers will hook up to it to justify you extending service there. So that's the way the policy is written, and I know there's some discussion about whether you want to change that or not. So we can probably have that. That's really the part that applies specifically to this development. Up a little higher than that, 21.1 would be a single house builds within your service territory that was not on the main line at the time when you built this network. How do you treat that? And it basically says the same thing. You'll extend at your cost to existing or newly constructed homes in an existing platted area within the city, provided your system is near. Unless you, in your sole judgment, and there's your caveat, you're out, is the extraordinary circumstances exist that make the provision of service cost burdensome to the utility, such as unusually high cost or services expected to be temporary. So, the temporary one actually could come into play in some cases. Somebody wants to put a camper out there and they want to live in it 3 months a year. You can say, well, if you want fiber there, we're not going to do that at our own cost because you're a temporary customer. And also you could say financially, you're not going to justify that expense because you're only going to buy our service 3 months a year. So that's one area, where in your judgment you can say, no, we need to have something worked out.
So is this a case-by-case deal? We just got to look at their revenue and look at the cost. You might be near, but I mean, there's no really boilerplate on that then, Curtis?
Well, if you look at 20.1.4 new developments, B.
They're both kind of the same language. I was thinking.
Yeah, they're very similar.
Same
yeah.
Either one.
With new developments, it's more about, we're talking about not just one property. We're talking about a new housing development, really, where there might be 5 properties, 10 properties, whatever. And what this says is, you're going to extend it if it's close enough, and it seems like Dave's saying you guys kind of accounted for this in the design, and if in your judgment there's an adequate number of customers within that area to justify it. So those are kind of your 2 tests. Now the thing I see that is a real wrinkle here for you guys to consider with this development that you've been talking about is that development doesn't exist in a vacuum. That is a new development where there are currently no telecommunications services. It is highly unlikely that if you build fiber to the home there, that anybody else will ever build fiber to the home there. That will be the only area in your service territory where you have a monopoly, so to speak. So you can expect a higher potential take rate there than you might in an existing area of town where that customer has two other choices. Also, it's my understanding that that developer has had some discussions with another provider about building fiber there too. I would certainly hate to see anything happen that would see another provider building fiber optic network in your city limits. That just seems to me to be a very bad precedent to set. So those are kind of some of the extenuating circumstances about that. It's really just a numbers game. It's all going to come down to dollars and cents. And, if you think that there's going to be, in that development, there's going to be enough housing over the next few years that it's going to create cash flow that will pay for the cost of building it. It's like the business plan you did for the whole darn system. It had to pay for itself, right? Or we wouldn't be sitting here. It's the same math you'd work out on that. And if you say no, developer, you're going to pay for it, which of course is all within your rights to do it, do you run the risk that that developer then goes to this other provider and says, thanks, but they're going to do it for me for free or cheap or whatever? Is there going to be water service extended here, city water? Yes. Okay.
City limits, so it has all the other city utilities except electricity.
Right.
It's outside of our jurisdiction.
Yeah, electric's so weird because of the utility board boundaries. So that's kind of, that's the area that really deals with that discussion you were having there. And I really like the idea that you were talking about in the last part of the meeting about probably wouldn't be a bad idea to just sit down with the developer and figure out where his head's at and where they are planning to go and what they plan to do, and indeed learn more about that person's willingness to participate in some way. I think you could get real creative with it if you needed to. If you as a board felt we absolutely need this person, this developer, to financially contribute to this development, then I think there are more creative ways to do that than to just say it's $60,000 to build it, we want a check or we won't build it. You're going to have to be a lot more creative than that. Because if we were that uncreative in developing public infrastructure in this country, no one would have anything. So I think it's a good idea to sit down with that developer and find out exactly how, what their willingness to work with you is.
I'm a little surprised he hasn't contacted us, if he's contacted another.
Or as he was contacted by them. I don't know. I just heard that through the grapevine. I don't even know if it's true. I don't even know who this person
I've
is.
heard it from him, so I don't know. The real key is, it's easy for me because I'm sitting there thinking this is an extension of your network. We built that far for a reason because we could see that he was starting to do the groundwork, just as we built to the direction southeast part of town and left a pedestal ready to go. If that development goes, then even if it's part of it, that's out of town even. But it's
one of the things I've always, my little utility advocate hat on here, one of the things I've always, when I've talked to communities about municipal broadband, or heck, even any other kind of municipally owned utility, one of the things I've always said is the greatest advantage of such a system owned by the citizens is that you have the power to say yes. And by saying that, I mean the power to always be an advocate for and a partner in development. If you set the precedent with this provider or with this developer that you're not going to be that partner and you're just going to make them write a check for it, then you have the very likelihood that you're going to stifle further development because everybody else is going to say, well, why would I build a housing development in the city limits now if I'm going to have to write this big check to develop it? That would be the concern I would have just on a very high philosophical level.
What does newly platted areas kind of actually mean? I don't know what it means, but it's recently.
I don't know, maybe that's not the right term to use. Again, that was boilerplate that I borrowed from someone else.
It seemed like to me newly platted would be something after this has been put into effect. It'd be new to this agreement.
Yeah, potentially. I think really for your guys' discussion, this policy doesn't really have to be in effect today, right? The big ones, you could knock out the acceptable use policy tonight. You could knock out the privacy policy. Hopefully set the rate policy on your next one. Bring this one back and set it. As long as this is in place before you actually start turning customers on, you're fine. That gives you some time to have some conversation with this developer and figure out a plan, knowing that he's also on a deadline, I assume, with getting duct work in and all that stuff. So.
Flip side to that is that if we were to approve this tonight, it leaves us with the option of requiring a refundable customer deposit or developer advance for construction, which are the two things that I've heard we might ask. And in the future, if we wish to change it, we can certainly change it.
Well, that next paragraph down says that. It's in your sole judgment.
Right.
So you could,
Like
even if you approve this today, you could pass a motion next week saying it is the judgment of this board that this developer needs to pay a developer advance or a refundable customer deposit. You're exactly
Or
right.
anybody else in the
Or
future.
anybody else
Yeah.
in that.
I mean, I can't see why we'd want to change this to give up our right,
Well,
so to speak, or to nail it down.
The danger would be if you treat different developers differently just because of the personalities involved, then you're going to open yourself up to cries for favoritism. And
Yeah, even if it's different size, if it's 10
Yeah.
lots versus 100 lots, you could actually still run into that same
yeah,
issue, so you gotta be careful with that, but.
yeah, there's policy and there's precedent, so
Yeah.
you got to be careful on both, right?
But we're not going to write precedent into here.
Yeah, well, ideally no.
Okay.
You always give yourself an out.
So
How many houses are going to be in that development? If
Well,
it's
this 33 is the first, is the main one, you know.
Okay,
There's
but-
potential,
so, but how many
Using
like in the
his
next
term,
5
potential.
years?
maybe not his lifetime, but potential.
Okay.
33 more, so it's very easily, you know, those were,
Are they thinking in 5 years we'll have 30 houses out there?
but again, you know, I'm not in the development business, but I work with developers, stay at Holiday Inn Expresses, so, you know, I take everything with a grain of salt as to
Probably
what
thinks he'll have
is going to
30 in
happen.
1 year, but this
Yeah.
is-
What's going to happen. So that's, you know, but I look at this from my point of view as an outsider, but building these, pick on Gerald Horst who's not here, you know, we need to have fibers out for development, you know, for development parks and stuff like that. Well, here's a real life development within your city limits. I mean, to not get too much in the weeds here, but you also have people in the rural that are signing up on the site saying, I don't care, when are you gonna come get me? So we keep saying, well, let's get this built first, and before we get into that, peel that layer off the onion. But these are within your city limits, you know, that's, I mean, we could see the work starting to happen last December, but we didn't have enough information to, I mean, if in hindsight, I kind of wish I'd have said, okay, I'm going to throw X amount of dollars in here, but for something that may or may not go, you know, didn't really affect the bonding that Michael's doing because he rounds everything up. So, you know, that's, I mean, if we're doing trading dollars, we gained more than that by the new meet point than what we will spend on that. But again, that comes down to exactly the point of how are you going to treat the developers? What's your policy? Is there some upfront skin in the game they should have? Well, I certainly wouldn't argue with that. But there again, I think to Mike's point, you know, maybe he needs to get in and you need to go to private session and do a little negotiating or something. I don't know exactly the rules on that. Your city attorney, I can tell you that. But I mean, I can give you. That's why I don't want to really give you an exact dollar, because if you're going to be negotiating with him, I want you guys to have some leverage too. I work for you, so not for him. So
well, it seems like there's another step in there, Tom. Normally, I would think that you would have a meeting with the developer and see what they want. Not that you could set any policy that they can do, because you haven't been instructed yet how to do that. But then you could report back, and that could happen faster rather than having a special meeting. And from there, you might have a direction where we should.
I think he's met with Chris Moore to talk about the rest of the city's water, certain things.
and Tom and I had a high level, or you know, very high level discussion with him, threw out even a high level number, which is not the number, but you know, said, look, John, you're looking at something like this, you know, and he didn't have a heart attack, but again, his tact, I think, then was still, well, I'm negotiating with everybody, okay, well then, fine. Okay, but I agree, personally, I mean, just, we've talked to him once, talked to him some more, I mean, and if he has that authority to do that, to have some discussions with him, I mean, subject to board approval, that's kind of usually how we do it with developers. If I'm involved, we just, you know, let's just sit down and talk turkey. And we always have the out of, board's got to approve this, you know, if they don't approve it, or the city, or whatever, you know.
That's where I'm at.
We're under a time crunch, why don't we just meet with them?
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
that's
we're
all
gonna
you
meet
call.
with- Tom's gonna meet with them, then we're gonna hear from Tom, then we're gonna eventually discuss with him, why don't we just get everybody's eggs out there?
And to agree with you at the same point, they've already apparently had some meetings, so Tom has some idea what he's thinking, but
So what's,
He might have got more information from Chris on what options were available, so it might be a more productive meeting now.
I think it probably should be a meeting with city representatives too, because it is one big, I mean, it's not like you guys operate in a vacuum here. The city's going to be doing things in this development. They want the utilities to do things in this development. So I think it makes sense to have those people all around the table.
Yeah, my point of view is there's a deal out there to be made.
Yeah.
We got to do it. And how it works is, there's a lot of moving parts. But.
So back to my question earlier about the language that's in here for new developments. These are the same copies as were emailed to us, or is this a new?
Yes, but all we changed was the date adopted on blank. So
The original ones didn't have a date on it.
yeah,
Right, but it's the same. The language has.
yeah,
not
nothing
changed.
else. Nothing else changed.
The
From
reason I
it.
asked that is I didn't read these copies in front of me, but
Right.
I have read the one
The
I've
rest-
seen before.
Yeah, nothing. The only policies number where things changed in it were the rate policy, which came out of the result of the previous discussions. Yeah, nothing in any of these has changed.
So even if we were to, just hypothetically, if we were to adopt these as is tonight, we still have ins and outs, and we still have the ability to leverage and discuss with developer on how to move forward.
I
How
certainly
about
But I
think
do agree
so.
there's a difference between precedence and policy.
I'd like to see some language changes on this communications policy. So I think we had said we wouldn't have to necessarily pass that tonight. So I think that I would work on 20.1.4. I have a question on the bottom of that too, Curtis. It says 21.3. Where's that at?
Trying to find it myself.
It refers to it.
21.3.
That very, very bottom paragraph. refers to it.
Facility relocations.
Is that 20.13?
Oh, well, that's 20.1.
Commercial, industrial, governmental property.
What's the header you're talking about?
It's as detailed section below for outside city limits extension, customer advances and refunds shall be followed. It's on the bottom of 20.1.4.
Okay, thank you.
I think then you've got 21 facility relocations on the next page, but it doesn't have 21.3. So I'm not really sure if that's a typo or what it is. In this case, the policy is detailed in the section going through below.
Oh, you're right.
Advances
That
and
is a
refunds.
typo. It should be 20 point.
1.3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I missed a zero and a dot, didn't I?
Above versus below.
Above. Yep. Thank you. You make a good editor. I have to call you up someday.
I just don't like necessarily the unusually high cost or service expected to be temporary, or the other one, or an unacceptable risk of limited customers. If you just scratch all that and say, VMC reserves the right to require refundable customer development advance for construction costs. Just something simple like that, which is kind of covers everything. We don't have to say why. We just reserve the right to refuse or to require advance. Then we can come up with that policy on what percent it is, like REC does.
Yeah, you'll still need to give somebody a reason, or you're going to be susceptible to them coming back and saying, you helped this guy and you didn't help that person. So
Unduly risky or burdensome.
yeah, you're right. You could revise that to just say, if in your sole judgment it's unduly a risk or burdensome, you reserve the right. Yeah. But I don't think you'd want to just say, we're not doing it, and we're not telling you why.
Yeah, it's a good point.
That way, that probably wouldn't go over very well.
It's my motto, but
Well, yeah. So would you propose taking out, after burdensome to the utility,
yeah,
the stuff that's in parentheses there?
yeah, that's if you could scratch that, I'd be okay with it.
Okay.
Unless there's other things that screws up.
Shouldn't.
Three places all three places, almost the fourth one on the first page before.
Is that same language up below, above?
It's in all four, it's in 21, 1, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Basically the same parentheses, brackets are in all of those.
Yeah. It is. So,
Mike, do you have any other things besides those two?
No.
No. I think it's time to get these in place for one thing. I make a motion that we accept the internet acceptable use policy, the privacy policy, and the communication policy amended with the typo corrected and those 4 points of unusual high cost of acceptable risk of customers removed.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Then we got E, approved rates.
okay, rates. So what you see before you is a result of the discussions from a couple of different closed session meetings, closed so that because of the proprietary nature of and the fact you're entering a competitive business. What you see here is, to my best interpretation, the will of the board as discussed in our last discussion, whereby you would adopt, these rates would be adopted. You would also have a promotion, which I don't know if we have language or if you're going to do that later, that says the promotion would be that a customer that signs up, residential customer that is hooked up before the end of 2020 would receive whole home Wi-Fi service for as long as they kept the service consistently. They disconnect, they'll lose it, they'll start paying. People that wait and hook up after 2020, they would pay the $11.99 that's in your policy, or is it $9.99? $9.99. That was the discussion we had last time as a alternative, to offer and add value back to those internet service tiers on the residential side. So that was part one. The other discussion was including the battery backup as a component of all the telephone services, as opposed to making it an option and making people pay for that. So there's battery backup still in here, but it's now listed under internet service because that battery backup could also supply backup power to a router. So if the customer didn't have phone but did have internet and they thought it was important that they be able to still have Wi-Fi when their power's out at their home, they could rent that battery backup for $4 a month. If they've got internet and phone, they wouldn't need to rent one because they already got one there for their phone. Those are the two real changes as a result of that discussion last week. And again, the idea there was to add value back to the customers so that they would they will feel more comfortable with the price levels that were set.
What was the date on the 2020? The January 1st?
12/31/20.
Okay, so a year.
A year, yeah, because the poor customer can't control how fast we can get them hooked up. They're connected, so.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, so on the battery, I just want to be really careful with the batteries because that is a high maintenance item, and you replace them every so often, which is why you can charge that monthly lease. So it's great. You have to offer it per FCC requirements. You have to offer it, but you can't charge for it. So just be a little careful if that's one of those items. If you offer for free for a while, just be a little careful with it because they do wear out, and they are, their lifespan is, just one set might be 3 years, one might be 5 years, that type of thing. Doesn't use hardly any electricity. They really don't notice that yet in your outlet, but things like that. Just be a little careful.
And that's why we went with only phone people getting them. If you have phone service with it, because that's not going to be as many people as or internet.
Yeah,
and
because it takes bigger.
Have internet, then you have to buy for it.
I mean, that's why most companies are just saying, okay, if you want it, we'll provide it, so much a month.
with the phone service, I believe what the discussion we had, there's a little bit included in the monthly charge for that.
Yeah, we did.
It's not line item
Did you
for-
filter?
We did include a little bit additional charge.
And I know that
Monthly rate.
it's, usually it's in that $5.99 to $8.99 range, and you want 24 hours.
Knowing that we're gonna have to replace that $60 cost every few
Right.
years.
So you can make money on it if you have a lease rate, but yeah,
Right.
you don't have it filled in there somewhere. Okay, good.
It's in there.
Good.
So if we cut the electrical power off, because they didn't want to pay the bill, how long do they get still?
Long enough to shop for another electric provider. Oh wait.
That questions come up next door here, and they're asking that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah. Well, you have people that want to pay their telecommunications bill, but not their electric bill, because it's more important to them.
Of course, the TV won't be on.
Yeah, there's some issues with that.
There's some rationalization that could happen with
Yeah.
their electrical bill, so you could have the things that you wanted to pay for.
Right.
But maybe.
That is another policy that's we've got to determine, but we really can't do that until we get all the billing stuff figured out, and that is when the customer comes in to make a partial payment, where does that payment get applied toward first? If their bill is...
They're going to be separate, the utilities.
No, but I mean talking within the communication bill. So I owe you $120. I just want to give you $70 to leave the internet on. Will you allow them to do that, or do you decide where that money goes first? In many utilities, they say no. That partial payment's going to be applied toward your cable TV because we have fixed costs of programming. So we got to pay that programming cost whether you pay the bill or not. Therefore, that money goes first there, and then it goes toward internet and phone. Well, later discussion. We'll have that
Have a
discussion.
policy for that then.
We need to have a policy for that because it's set up in how the billing flows.
So it'll be a billing, will it be part of this policy, or will it be a separate billing policy?
I think it'll be a separate billing policy. We'll figure that part out, but you just need to know that's really the big one is how do you assign partial payments within your different services that you provide.
Is that something that we could piggyback off of the billing system that we're using? Do you have a policy in place like that somewhere?
I'm sure we do. I haven't a clue what it is, but
That's why we're not ready for it yet. I really wanted to get the billing
Not
thing
your
in
department.
place, then we can take a deep dive into what maybe their software is only capable of doing in a certain way. I don't know.
Yeah, most building companies have an accounting package they call. So I'm pretty sure it probably does, just a matter that it divides it or allocates it to certain deals.
On the city side.
It's a setup script.
Even if we
I'm sure you
$70
probably do.
$120,
Use
just
it.
pro rata.
CHR.
Prorated to wherever it is.
Yeah.
Unless if they specifically ask to go towards the electric, we can do that, but otherwise we just
I try to
prorate.
avoid as many house meetings as possible.
The computer does that.
I just took all the payments and fills,
We have that policy in place for that.
but I know they can do it.
So Alan, I hate to put you on the spot, but I'm curious, are you comfortable with what's in this, the communication rates? I think so. You're comfortable with them? Good.
Any more discussion? Motion.
Do we accept the communication rates, including the promotion?
For a second.
I'll second.
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 8, new business. Consider new budget for VMCU.
Oh, thank you.
So, just so you know, it's not by chance that the revenue at the bottom matches the total expenses on page 2 of the expense one. It was concocted to go that way right now. And I took, on the revenue side, I took the last report I had from Todd on the first year revenue for residential and commercial on the different services, and subtracted or divided it by 2 for a 6-month run, because this will get us through the end of June. So that's what he had in there, and that may change based on what we actually see for sign-ups. And this was just the best guess at that time. And the only way I got this thing to balance out the zero at the bottom was basically to have transfers from inter-fund loans, which is basically the Series 2019A, which takes care of the equipment purchases, and the 2019B, which is the working capital that helps with the startup operations. So those numbers basically match some of the expense ones that are laid out. On page 1, the top basically is the labor part for the positions that we have, and then everything under the total personnel off services was basically the stuff we're doing with IMON and WIN and CFU and what the office needs. And that total is on line 37 on page 2, and then the stuff underneath that above 51 is basically, that's the capital outlay for capital equipment, and I'm using these numbers that have come from our bids and things like that. So, and I left the contingency in there, so when I get down to line 57, I basically force the revenue to match it right now, so which is probably not I don't know, the thing about line 35 and 6 on page 1 about those transfers of inter-fund loan, I'm not sure that was the proper accounting method, because when I looked at some of the other stuff, they don't show it on the revenue sheet, they show it on another debt service thing. But I wanted to simplify this right now, so I guess this is just a starting point.
Is interest in here anywhere?
No. And the let's see, there's 2 items in there. I don't know what the WIN internet transport number is off their page for their gigabyte bandwidth for 6 months, and then the lease fiber from VMEU, I don't have a number in that either. I'm hoping to come up with something, but this is just something to get us going. This is all out of 954. The fund numbers, I'll let Cindy decide what she wants to do. I kept some of the numbers the same from the electric over just to put them in order, but those can all be changed.
Say you're working with Todd on this, or did he?
Well, I'm going to send him this. I sent him one earlier that was a draft, but this one's more complete, and he might have some information coming back on the revenue stream that would change. But I guess I don't see, whatever we get out of the bonds, the biggest chunk of that's going to be that $3.5 million for the equipment that is really going to come this year or the next 6 months before the end of the fiscal year.
The other thing reference to Todd, I know he told me that once the rates were adopted, he can go to town on monthly revenue and expense projections. So now that those are in place, he'll make the deep dive.
Next month he may bring something from him, you think?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I'm only doing the 6 months on this budget because we're not going to do anything the first 6 months until something gets going as far as revenue stream.
Yeah, because that's fiscal year, right?
Right.
You won't see any
we're
revenue.
July to June, so.
Right.
So I took the 1 year that we had where money was coming in, and I divided that by 2 what he had in there.
Yeah, and Todd was he'll do like month over month revenue expenses, with month 1 being the first month you have customers, essentially. Everything before that, expense wise, we were considering year 0, so that's a little bit upfront expenses.
So you think we'll get a monthly sheet like that, just showing this week?
Well, yeah, that's the idea. You start with a month-over-month projection, and then you true that up on a regular basis to say, did we, where are we at? Here was actual. Here's March projection. Here's March actual. So we can, kind of get an idea of whether we're meeting our goals as far as, because he wants to time it so, like that money on the operational loan, time it so that you don't actually pull it out until you need it. So rather than pull it out, it just sits there and you're paying interest on it and you're not using it. It's to try to keep that timing as tight as possible so that it saves you some interest.
It'll be all over the board the first few months too.
Oh, yeah.
As long as people sign up.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah.
And he has to time when we actually can start truly cutting over customers, so.
Yep.
So we've been using when he's bugging me, I'm going, well, Todd, January 1, but maybe we can do, test customers that long before that. But when we're ready to go, and if we can turn over routes, we obviously don't want to be turning over partial routes because there's splicing, and we don't need a splicing error to take down some of our customers. And we have it, the town is split up, so there's potential to turn up a piece of town earlier than January, but that's been the number to kind of keep Todd off my back when, because then he can start, filling in true revenue numbers. So, but I think that's still rather reasonable. I mean, hopefully we'll beat that. But again, there's a lot of case studies on they turned up too quick, and so we'll just make sure we're done.
We're still playing the game of your worst case, his best case scenario.
Yeah, we're in some week somewhere in the middle. Yeah,
You want to be realistic.
well, I mean,
I can go along with January 1, but it could be.
And again, in fairness to Todd, I tease him a lot, but he's trying not to say, okay, October 1, you're going to have this revenue stream, when we know it's going to be December 1 or January 1. So, that's why he's rightfully saying, what do you think? So I'm hedging a little bit, saying I think I can beat January 1, but if all else fails, let's follow that.
Well,
You don't want to be turning over customers necessarily in obviously Christmas time unless you're already doing it in December 1st. You don't want to start and stop. So that time of year is not necessarily a good time to be doing that kind of stuff. But again, we'll have a lot more determined over the next 60 days.
And there's a delay in that revenue from when that customer is hooked
and
up.
again, we're not going to
30 to 45 days before you actually have that money in your
right,
hands. So.
and we're not going to turn out 1,500 people like that.
I think we just made news today.
Yeah.
Good thing we're not live.
Yeah. But that's part of that conversion process, and we start turning them up and start getting the revenue, and that's what he's building month by month. So what we really want to be is totally rocking and rolling by the end of the fiscal year is what we really want to be doing, which is the key on the contractor. Get the duct in. We can shove cable in there anytime. Get the duct in. So that's why you're seeing all that orange duct out there.
And I try to get this so that Cindy would have some things to put in her in code 954.
All right, thank you. B, consider working with IPAIT.
That's the Iowa Public Agency Investment Trust. And I can tell you the website connection. The Iowa League of Cities, the Iowa State Association of Counties, and the Iowa Association of Municipal Utilities a sponsor. IPAT is sponsored by those three. They basically can take the money that we're putting in the bank for bonding and I guess help us manage it. I don't know if they try to invest it. I didn't get a real favorable response back from Chris when I was asking him about the service and whether he's used it or not. One of the gentlemen's going to come and meet me Thursday. I said, well, I'll present it to the board for consideration. So I don't know if it's any benefit for us or not, whether it's just another layer of paperwork that will be, I don't know. Curtis, have you had experience using this with any of the others?
I other than I recognize that who they are, we used them at Spencer. So
You'll have more to report after Thursday is what I'm hearing.
I'll find out what they can offer us and what benefit they can provide.
All right. C, consider purchase of IP addresses.
Yeah, I just got that yesterday, I think. For 2304 addresses, they had a unit price, and the quote was $46,080. It's only valid until August 20 of this year, so I guess I don't know if you want me to go ahead and process
And to add to that, this is through a broker. It's almost like the gray market. They don't want to call it black market, gray market for IP addresses for the internet geeks. But you'll own these addresses, and we'll put them in the router, turn them over to IMON, and we can do that. But you will own them. And this particular brokers we've worked with before, we're helping them with that. And it's like, was it $20 a piece? The other ones we got quoted were in the 23 to 25, and then some of them had you buy 500 at 20, and then it goes up to 20. So bottom line, these guys said, "Look, here's what we'll do." So get us the paperwork because we've got a board meeting coming up. So
that's pretty realistic price then. Good
yeah,
price.
yeah. I mean that's if we always try to, if we can get it around 20, and then not have too many caveats of after 500 it's 23, and after this these guys, and we've worked with this group before and got them for companies like Clear Lake and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, they deliver. It's I always shake my head but there's a limit to these IP addresses, running out. So these brokerage firms, it's really what they are. They're buying up blocks and then they sell them to companies like IMON or Vinton, and it's a crazy world. I'm glad I'm not the one doing the negotiating. One of my partners does that, but the key is you will own them. So no matter who your provider is, IMON, and if for some reason in 5 or 7 years you change from IMON, you still own them. You don't have to reapply or, and go through all of that.
You've paid it once.
You've paid it once.
Paid it once, yeah.
It's not annual.
It's a cost of doing business in the internet world, I guess. Yeah, say I gotta be careful because
you want to own your IP addresses. Because I just even was thinking like when he was like, oh, in 5 years it can move to somebody else, and I'm like, oh my gosh, all the rerouting of numbers and things you have to do on different IP addresses. It's a headache. So owning your own IP addresses is a big deal.
Bellevue just went through that about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was a major headache.
Which is why we started just working with brokerage firms ourselves as a consulting company, because this guy that's doing it was the guy who was doing most of the changes. So in a way we're costing ourselves money because it's a lot of work that a specialist like he needs to do. So, but on the other hand, he's like, this is ridiculous. We can go do this ourselves and get it you set up, and now you own them. Have a good day and move on. Whatever else happens. So that's really where it is. And it's a weird thing. He doesn't like the term black market, but I keep saying it's kind of what it is.
If I could interject, it's probably the only thing you're going to buy in IT that's going to most likely appreciate rather than
there is a value to
go up.
Yeah.
It's going to maintain.
Yeah, I mean, if worst thing happened and you ever shut down, you can resell those back to a broker. So yeah, you're right. I hadn't thought about that. But yeah, hopefully that isn't to happen, but there is a value to them.
And that's enough? That's enough addresses?
Yeah, because he's got it set up for that. There's like the business and that, and then you can go more. And because they're so limited, I mean, he spent, I don't know when we started, but he's probably spent 30 days negotiating just off and on, solid. But what do you need this for? And we're explaining, and we're saying how many we could have, and going on and on and on. And they wanted to give us only so many, and we kind of kept going back because I wasn't comfortable with. And there's different allocations for businesses and hospitals and stuff as opposed to an individual that gets one. So all of that. So we played all those games and came up, and that's where they came back. We can do this, and this should be enough. I mean, Brian's. If we need more than that, it's going to be a good problem because that means we've signed up about 100% of the people here. It's about what it amounts to, or 90%. So it's a good problem if we have to go back. And it's easier the second time because you already have the contract in place.
Is this in our budget?
Yeah, that was part of all the.
Okay. The motion. Second. Motion seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Reports.
Okay, still been working with consultants on the partnership proposals. We submitted a American Registry for Internet Numbers registration service agreement, ARIN. I think we finished that today, and the NCTC, which is the National Cable Television Cooperative application, has been completed and submitted, and I think they're sending the application fee for that, so that's getting done. the Alliant. We're getting close, but I don't know, do you much film on what's going on?
Yeah, they've decided they needed a lawyer in here, so of course that stopped everything. She's been driving me crazy. We've got basically, just to reiterate, because we have a new board member, 6,000 feet, approximately 6,000 feet of this build is Alliant needs to get to their facility and then out to the world. So we proposed between their consultant and myself, talked a year ago about if we're going to go down the same street, let's do it together. So bottom line, the agreement we have, if we can get it past this young lady and their new project manager yet to be named, which is the latest hitch, is we can save probably $35,000 or $40,000 over that stretch. They're going to pay for their own materials. If they want it inspected, they can use their whoever to inspect. We'll take care of ours and obviously watch over the whole thing. They'll put their own handholds in as they need them, that type of stuff. So it's a pretty good savings to you. The hitch is just all this. And we've told them again today, hey, we're 3,000 feet away. And we're already modified our routes because this route is also where we basically have our mini ring. It's an important route. So at some point we got to do it. We're dancing around it right now, and they keep asking for 2 weeks, and I give Tom credit. He warned me, you're going to be dealing with Alliant. This is going to take a while. And my God, he's right. It's just, I hate it when he's right all the time. It's like, come on. And then now they say there's a project manager, a new project manager. And I said, well, who is it? Well, I haven't named him yet. I said, so you're stopping the whole thing for that? I said, but again, my update to you is that we said, look, at some point we're going to move ahead. So you can either do this with us or not. We're kind of holding the cards. You're the ones that want to piggyback off of your build, and we'd love to save money, but at some point, go. So we kind of gave them that 2-minute warning today again. After one last week, I told my guy that's talking to him, just hit him again right now, because I'm sitting here in Vinton and we're 3,000 feet away and we're routing to different areas, and as we bring more crews in, eventually we've got to do that, because once that route is done, then that opens up one of the other colored areas on your map so we can finish it. So we're kind of doing it backwards right now, trying to accommodate them, which is not a big deal. It's just at some point, come on, make a decision. You're saving them money too. So anyway, it's a pretty good chunk of change that we can use. So fun and games negotiating with other companies.
That's all I have for report on this.
Cindy? Marketing? Now we got rates. What are we going to get it?
I'd like to start tomorrow, but
I can talk a little
in that
bit.
room can do things.
So we think the website will be ready with the rates tomorrow. All right. The sign up. So the next step then at some point is people get to go in and choose which services they want. We're going to be doing that customer product selection through the CrowdFiber site, and it's not quite there yet. We've got some work to do to get that ready, so that's going to trail behind. So we're going to have this little lag time where people will go in, they go to look at the website, they can see what the internet prices and packages are, and learn more about the products and everything. And then when we've got all the stuff entered into CrowdFiber and it works and we've done some testing, because it's a fairly complex process, then everybody that's registered in CrowdFiber, that registered for the site survey, is going to get an email, and that email will say it's time to select your products and services. They'll click a little link on the email, it'll open it up, and then it's just like in a shop. It's like an online store where they'll say, I want Internet 100, and I want local telephone, and I want this package of cable, and I want HBO, and I want 3 extra set tops. And as they have these things on the side, it'll tell them, here's what your monthly bill will be, just for those products and services. And then when they hit submit, that gets captured back in CrowdFiber. And then at some point, once all the billing stuff is set up, we'll be able to export that data to our friends in Cedar Rapids, and they'll be able to put those into the billing system. There's probably going to have to be some manipulation, but all the data will be there in raw format that should be able to be imported. If not, Corey's going to work 24/7 and he's going to type them all in. Totally.
That's how my general budgeting works. If I've overlooked something, it's Saturdays and Sundays for Corey.
So when
So-
you say the website, you're talking about the iVinton website,
Yeah.
so to have the,
Yep.
the stuff posted.
So, you know, your citizens have been so patient to this point. They've also been excited as heck. And sometimes it's hard to keep excited people being patient, but very soon they will be able to actually go in and pick what they want and make an order that will sit there and be ready for their installation. But even starting sooner than that, they can go in and start saying, okay, finally you told me what the price is for this or that or that. So that information should be available in short order, hopefully tomorrow.
There are going to be tons of questions.
Oh yeah.
You can't do all this just on the ground fiber thing
Yeah.
online.
Yeah.
So the office set up, then the phones.
Yep, absolutely. When the office is set up, right now there's a chat function there'll be a chat function on the iVinton site. So if somebody sees something, they can chat and somebody's going to answer that question for them.
Maybe
Then,
Curtis mentioned what you were talking about some video maybe of.
yeah, we're going to do some explanatory, like quick videos, like here's how you'll sign up online, here's what this will look like, here's what that'll look like. We also talked about doing, you know, like iVinton does your meetings on Facebook Live, going on and doing a Facebook Live of a kind of a Q&A where we have Tom and maybe me and maybe somebody else, and we just talk about the project and we talk about the process, and people can go on Facebook and type in their questions and we can answer them in real time and kind of make it almost like a little live telecast of that. So that's another way to do the education piece. I think we've fleshed out really good information on this site. So I think that'll answer a lot of them. Certainly, a lot of the questions that they have right now, they'll be answered by going there, especially the numbers. Everybody wanted to see the numbers.
So we should probably have some flyers made with the costs and
So we've got all that design kind of fleshed out. The details now can be nailed down with numbers, and hopefully get those printed materials done here in the next couple of weeks. Certainly by the time you have a storefront, that we can have counter cards and
that was
flyers.
that flyer thing that you showed us, the
Yeah.
page thing.
Yep. Yep.
Well, that would be something good for Patriot to have with them. with their
Yes.
sites and
Yes. And get that stuff to them as well. Yep.
The TV channel, you got names for these things, that they have those that have the shows each of the channels.
Yep. We got a lineup card in that
And that'll
group
be
of
on-
things that we'll be printing. Yep.
Okay. Anything else? Motion to adjourn, anybody? Motion to adjourn. Move, second. Move, second. All